Well, 2020 has been a tough year, and we're just at the beginning of 2021. Now, one of the challenges in these years is that the performance of markets has been quite dampened by, of course, the lockdown and the associated standard operating procedures, to try and rein in the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, we are trying to look at how the markets are faring for Uganda, looking at the financial and equity markets.
The world is coming out of the COVID pandemic, or seemingly coming out, because we're having a second wave in various countries, and questions are coming around, and the biggest question is around how quickly our economy is going to rebound or recover from this pandemic. Are markets going to go back to the way they were before? Is life going to go back the way it was before? Globally, when I think about the global outlook, I think about growth, and global growth is expected to recover to above 5%, according to various estimates, with the emerging markets or the frontier markets growing faster. From an ABSA perspective, the Africa outlook, or African economies are expected to grow at about, or sub-Saharan African economies are expected to grow at about 3.2%, with some countries, bigger economies, growing maybe slower. Nigeria about 2.2%. And all of that is really dependent on how quickly the economies respond to post-COVID, or how long the second waves of the COVID impact remains on the economies. It's expected also generally that the stock markets are going to recover. The S&P 500 is expected to recover. Oil prices are also expected to recover. I think in the last quarter of 2020, they crossed the 50 mark, and it's expected that with the resumption of activity, with the resumption of travel, with the rollout of vaccines, it's possible that the oil price could go to $60 and above in 2021. Talking about Africa, coming closer to Africa, expectation obviously is that there's going to be a mixed bag. Inflation is expected to maybe grow an average of about 9%. That's according to the ABSA estimates. But there are various things. Right now, we see that all those outlooks are going to be affected by the two biggest, or in sub-Saharan Africa, part of the two biggest economies, South Africa and Kenya, undergoing second waves of COVID. So what will that mean for their economies? It means that the outlooks will probably be dampened. So that remains for us to wait and see what is going to happen. ABSA launched the fourth edition of the ABSA Africa Financial Markets Index, and there were key or there are salient features that came out for us to think about. So the ABSA Africa Financial Markets Index measures the development of the financial market based on 6 pillars: market depth, which talks about the size and the liquidity of the financial market; access to foreign exchange, which talks about the exchange regime, the liquidity of the interbank markets; capacity of local investors, which talks about savings or pension assets in the economy and the number of products in the economy; macroeconomic opportunity, which talks about GDP growth, which talks about debt levels and things like that; and market transparency and tax environment; and lastly, legal enforceability of contracts. And so the index basically revealed that when Uganda was gauged or measured against 23 other countries across Africa, it came 10th, with a score that has slightly improved since the beginning of the index. And key points that were highlighted is that Uganda is doing well, or has improved in the score for access to foreign exchange compared to last year. And actually, when I think about all the scores that we lead in East Africa in access to foreign exchange, which means that there's been a lot more liquidity, there's been a lot more transparency around our exchange rate market, and also our exchange rate has performed significantly better than the peers. In a world that's characterized with a lot of volatility in 2020 and uncertainty, the Ugandan currency remained largely stable. Right now, we are in the levels of about below 3,700, same levels opened at the beginning of 2020, whereas other economies in the region have depreciated 6% or plus. How we're going to fare going forward is a good question. One of the pillars, macroeconomic opportunity, where Uganda was most improved, said Uganda was labeled and considered a resilient economy because it has had strong economic growth in the previous years, which has kind of cushioned it from the impacts of or the effects of COVID. That's really at a macro level. And we expect that that is going to continue. Economic growth for 2021 is expected for Uganda to be, according to Bank of Uganda, between 3.5 and 4.5. Expectation is that because of the longer effects of COVID lockdowns and what's happening on the sectors of the economy and affecting revenue collection and transactions and trade, those estimates actual may be lower than those estimates. Currency, our outlook for the currency is that we may see a peak of about, average peak of about 37.50. However, that remains is liable to change based on what was happening in the first quarter of the year or the first 2 quarters of the year, what we have seen. The currency has been very stable. We have seen a lot of portfolio investors coming in to invest in our treasury bills and bonds, and that is good for the economy.